Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2021 Tiffin Allegro Motorhome, we're going to be showing you how to install the SumoSprings for the rear axle. But before we do that, why don't we check them out and make sure that this is something that's going to work for you. So this is what the SumoSprings are going to look like once they're installed on your motorhome. And very simple concept, but extremely effective. How they're going to work is the bottom half is going to get connected to your leaf spring pack, which is part of your factory suspension. The other part, or the top of the SumoSpring, is going to be attached to a bracket which gets secured to your frame. So what's going to happen is whenever you're going over bumps or your suspension is going up and down, or even body roll, you know, when your motorhome wants to lean, when you're going around those turns and everything, the SumoSpring is more or less a big cushion. And what it's going to help do is kind of absorb some of those bumps and help your suspension be more responsive, because a spring like this is always going to want to go back to its natural resting position, which will be similar to this. And what happens is when you're going over a big bump, this is going to compress. And when that compresses, the SumoSpring is going to want to go back to that natural resting spot, and that's going to help absorb some of that shock and push your wheels back down to the ground and help keep your motorhome ride comfortable and responsive and predictable. Same holds true if it hangs down, you know, so maybe you're coming right off of a speed bump or something, it's going to want to pull that wheel back up in that natural spot. Same difference if the motorhome has a body roll. You know, if it's leaning this way, this is going to compress. The one on the other side will be expanding, and they're going to work together to get everything level again. And they really do a great job, actually. These things work really well. They are progressive, so what that means is the lighter it is back here, so maybe let's say if your fuel tank is back here, or water tank, something like that, or you know, whatever you have on the inside. If it's light, these aren't going to be as aggressive because you don't need all that extra support. But on the same note, if it's really heavy back here, maybe you're pulling a trailer or flat towing a vehicle, something like that, these are going to be a little more aggressive and provide that extra support that you need. With that said though, what we like to do before we get our SumoSprings on is actually get inside the motorhome, kind of run it through our test course and kind of get a good feel for it. That way we're able to, you know, compare before and after once we have the SumoSprings installed. All right, so we went ahead, hopped in our motorhome here, and what we're going to do is kind of run through our test course. So I'll straighten out, and the first thing that we're going to come across is some bumps here. Once that rear tire gets over that bump, I mean, it kind of just feels super loose. I know it's a big motorhome, and you're going to have some movement like that, but it just feels really top heavy, like it's swaying a lot. And it would definitely be a little bit nicer to kind of just tighten up a little bit, you know, and have the suspension just be a little more responsive, you know. So what I'm going to do now is kind of try to make some sweeping turns and try to, you know, simulate going around a big wide turn. And I'm sure, as many of you know, with these things being so top heavy, you tend to get a lot of body roll where it feels like the top of it's gonna, you know, really kind of come over on you. And it would be nice to try to eliminate that. I know we probably won't completely, but at least help. So we'll see how this does. I'll make a big turn here. And yeah, you can feel it. It's almost heavy, if that makes sense, from that weight getting kind of thrown to the side. And it'd be nice to kind of counteract that and almost feel like you're more planted to the ground when you make turns like that. So whether you're even going at speed or even really slow like this, you know, you can feel it. So I think regardless, you know, it's an area that could use some improvement. So now that we have our SumoSprings installed, let's go ahead and hop back in the motorhome. Again, run through the test course and see if we can feel an improvement. We're gonna do it the same way that we did this morning. we're gonna go over our bumps first. And a really notable difference, believe it or not. Don't get me wrong, there's still some movement and everything, but it does feel more stable. You know, I feel like that movement is reduced by about half compared to what it was. You know, we still get a little bit of rocking, but definitely less of it. You know, it slows down more and a lot faster. So over bumps and things like that, definitely an improvement. So now we'll go ahead and kind of run through the lot here and try to do some turns, get the motorhome leaning, and I cut it pretty good right here, and actually really good, believe it or not. There is hardly any body roll there at all, and I was relatively aggressive there on the gas and turning. We'll kind of do a sweeping turn here. And this morning you could feel that body roll. A little bit still there, but I'd say probably half. So definitely an improvement. And I could definitely see that, you know, making your driving experience that much better. You know, it's a little more controllable, feel a little more planted, which in turn will give you more confidence when you're going down the road. If you're really looking for the complete package to really make your driving experience that much better, I did suggest the front SumoSprings as well, but you can also do front and rear sway bars as well as a steering stabilizer. Now that may sound like a lot, but to be honest with you, that's what a lot of our customers end up doing. You know, one enhancement is going to be better than none, and a lot of people, you know, that's their approach. But once they realize how much better it is, they just keep adding to it. And once they have that complete package, it's a night and day difference. You know, and at the end of the day, a lot of people too are a little upset the motorhome didn't come like that right out of the box, right from the factory, because that's how much better it is. So honestly, these suspension enhancements go a long way and they're well worth it. As far as the installation goes, I'm not gonna lie, it is involved, but it's really not all that difficult. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time working on these motorhomes. Everything's big and heavy, so something to keep in mind. Speaking of the installation though, why don't we go ahead, pull it into the shop and put the springs on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here on our rear axle on our motorhome, and you need to jack up the rear axle. That way the tires are off the ground and they can rotate freely. With that said, make sure you have all of the proper safety equipment in place, like jack stands, have your front wheels chalked, and so on. With that said though, we need to remove the tires. That way we can have a bunch of space to get our SumoSprings actually installed. So I'll go ahead and pull those off now. Now that we have the tires out of the way, we can take our SumoSpring and our brackets and get them assembled. So, got the SumoSpring on the ground. We're going to be working on the top of it. So the top has this diamond shape with the bolt holes in it. We're going to be using these two holes. We'll take your upper bracket, which is this one here. All right, and make sure that this flanged part is facing up. So we're going to line that up there, the two holes. We're going to take these serrated head bolts. We're going to get both of them started. You can flip our assembly over there. You can see the bottom's going to have one threaded hole. We're going to take our bottom bracket, line that up, and another one of those serrated head bolts. Get this one going. This one we're not going to completely tighten. We just want to get it kind of snug. You still want to be able to move this bracket around a little bit. That way when we put it up in place, we can have some adjustability and make sure it's exactly where it needs to be positioned. So the way this is going to work, this bottom portion of our spring assembly is going to sit on our leaf spring pack. There's going to be a hook here, and you want to make sure that that goes around the leaf spring U-bolt, which we'll see in a second. You'll notice we have two square holes on this side, and eventually carriage bolts will drop through them. And so what you're going to do, you can see that hook there. You want to make sure that goes around push this edge up flush against here. All right. And then make sure that this portion is sitting flat, pretty flat against the frame. We'll draw it all together eventually. But for now, I'll focus on this. And with it in position, we can grab our carriage bolts. All right, so one will drop down through like this. The other one goes on the other side, and I showed you a moment ago. And once those are in place, what we're able to do is take this bracket. I'm going to make sure that the flat side of the bracket is going to sit against the bottom of the leaf spring pack, so like that. But this is going to go over carriage bolts, like so. Then you're going to take a flange nut, get one started on each side hand tight. With those hand tight, now we want to come back with a 9/16 socket and snug them down, tighten them down. And when you're doing these, you want to make sure to draw these up evenly. So run it down for a second over here, switch over here, and so on. Now all we need to do is just take some measurements. That way we know where we need to drill through our frame. That way we can bolt up our upper bracket. So I like to do this hole here on the very bottom, and this is going to hold true for each side of our upper bracket. So over here and over there. I just like to find the center of the hole, draw a line. Then we need to measure our frame. And there's a measurement and instructions that you can follow, and you're going to put a dot there. All right, so that's what I came up with. Now just kind of a tip, since a frame is rounded, sometimes it can be kind of tricky to, you know, find the very top of the frame and get an accurate measurement. So one thing you can do is take a straight edge or a piece of wood or something like this and hold it on the top flat. That way it gives your tape a good spot to kind of end, and you'll know it'll be true. So do that on each side and make your marks. So once you have those measurements made, what you want to do is start with this side, the side closest to the rear of our motorhome. We want that line on our bracket that we made to line up with the dot on our frame rail. So what we're going to need to do is take a jack and lift up our axle a little bit. So I just put it right underneath our hub. Believe it or not, it doesn't take much force to actually move this a little bit. So I'll jack this up and pay attention to the line and the dots. And that looks pretty good. So we'll sit tight here and get our drill ready to create an opening. So now using our upper bracket as a template, I'm going to take a 3/8 drill bit and drill through the frame. Before you get too carried away, make sure that you kind of feel behind the frame, make sure there's nothing of importance behind there that you're going to hit. In our case, we're clear, so we'll go ahead and get this drilled out. With your hole drilled, you want to take a bolt, run it through, and then on the back side of the frame, you're going to take another one of these nuts, and we're just going to get it started. So once you have that side lined up and that bolt in there, hand tight, you need to do the same thing over here. The majority of the time, you will have to jack the axle up just a little bit more to get your two lines to line up. With that said, we're going to do the same thing over here. 3/8 drill bit, using this as a template to go through our frame. Again, make sure there's nothing behind there. So now that we got both of our holes drilled on the bottom and both of the hardware in place and tight, this side takes the same bolt and nut setup as this. What we're going to do is tighten down the bottom ones. A 9/16 socket and a 9/16 wrench holding the nut on the inside of the frame. Now what we want to do is come back to the bottom of our SumoSpring, and that 9/16 bolt that we left kind of hand tight. We want to make sure we come back and tighten it completely down. Now what we need to do is a little more drilling. So we're going to have one more hole to drill on each side. We're going to use these very top holes. do it the same exact way that we did the other ones. So I went ahead, got those top holes drilled out, got the bolts and the nuts through there, and tightened everything down, and this is how it turned out. Once all that stuff is tight, you can remove the floor jack that you had underneath the hub here that helped raise the axle up to where we needed it to be. With the SumoSpring completely installed, we can go ahead and put our tires back on, and then we're simply just going to repeat this exact same process over on the other side to get that one installed as well. And once you have everything back together, what you want to do is lower the motorhome down just enough to where your wheels will touch the ground, and you don't want to forget to torque them to the amount specified from the factory. Really important that you do that. Definitely don't want a wheel coming off whenever you're going down the road. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the SumoSprings for the rear axle on our 2021 Tiffin Allegro Motorhome.